Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, with our main topic today. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi inspected a number of projects of developing Greater Cairo, including roads, accesses and bridges. The President also inspected the project of renovating historic Cairo that aims to turn the city into an iconic touristic destination. The President also included the renovation of projects of districts of Masr al-Qadima and Magra al-Uyun wall. The President also inspected the construction works of establishing Hazaballah al-Kafrawi accesses which connects Maadi district with East Cairo. Well, to shed more light on the renovations and accesses and bridges taking place in the historic Cairo, we have the pleasure to host this morning in the breakfast show our dear guest, Mr. Ihab Kamel, historian and researcher. Good morning, Mr. Kamel.
Good morning.
Mr. Kamel, first let's start with the President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's keenness to follow up and inspect every week the bridges and the accesses that is planned to be implemented in Old Cairo.
Well, as a matter of fact, I think this is something very important because he's tackling one of the major problems of Cairo, which is traffic. You know that Cairo has got a great population, which is representing about 20% of the Egyptian population. 20 million living in one city. Getting in and getting out is not an easy job to do. So for a very long time we've been suffering from this problem. For the first time we are tackling it from the core. As a matter of fact, there had been many warnings about this problem, that it was going to be a major problem in the future, especially from the Japanese JICA, which had warned about this, that Cairo was going to reach a complete traffic paralysis within 10 years. And no one really had tackled this problem until recently. Now, I guess this is really solving a great problem which will have its own impacts on different economic aspects, especially in investment, because as you know, this is something very important for investment, accessibility as well, and the flow of traffic, especially that Cairo is the historical capital and it deserves greater attention from all different parts of the government.
Yes. So, Mr. Kamel, let's have a closer look to President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's inspection on Friday to the district of the aqueduct wall, or Sur Magra al-Uyun, or the Magra al-Uyun wall.
Well, we have to understand that this wall, it's not many people know what was its function or how it was.
It was for sending the water to the citadel.
Yes, and not only this, it was a wall that was built to protect Cairo and to connect with the citadel.
And inside the wall, they made this.
They have an
yes.
aqueduct. This
yes.
aqueduct was made to connect the water to the citadel,
yes.
and they used to have big water wheels that existed, by the way, until the time of Khedive Ismail. That was near the Gulf, or what we call al Khalij,
yes.
that used to lift the water up into that aqueduct to connect it to the citadel in case Cairo was attacked, and in the medieval period, of course, and Cairo was besieged, so the defending fortress was to have its own supplies of water, and this was done during the Mamluk period, during the time of Sultan Qunsu
yes.
al-Ghuri.
Yes.
Basically speaking, this wall was not only used as an aqueduct, but also it used to have like checkpoints. They used to have two cavaliers that used to go, one goes clockwise and one goes anti-clockwise, so that they would inspect that everything is under control and to warn the defending forces of Cairo in case there's any kind of attack on the walls of Cairo. Of course, the Cairo that we see nowadays, it was not Cairo in the old times when it was founded. Cairo was much smaller.
Smaller than this?
Yes. When the Fatimids...
You mean the old Cairo?
Yes. Not old Cairo, the district itself. The district itself, it's more related to the first Islamic capital, actually,
yes.
the Fustat, which is
yes.
just only less than a mile behind the old Cairo. But Cairo, Islamic Cairo, that was founded by the Fatimids, was very small. It consisted only of two main streets, the Palace Walk Street, which had the two Fatimid palaces, the Winter Palace and the Summer Palace, which is now known by the name of Shara al-Mu'izz.
Yes,
that's
the Mu'izz Street.
Exactly.
Yes, that was once called the Greater Street.
Yes, it was only
that was the main street in Old Cairo.
Yes, yes, absolutely. It was only 40 cubits wide,
yes.
And there used to be side streets for the soldiers of the Fatimid army. The city of Cairo used to open in the morning, open its gates in the morning for those who are trading and merchants to come and trade in, and then by the end of the day they had to leave. Where did they leave? In the district of Old Cairo that we know nowadays, yes. In Fustat. Fustat was very big, was very prosperous, and all the indications and the excavations had shown that it had big houses, big streets, some palaces, and it was a very big and prosperous city. Yes. Some people ask, but although Cairo was the capital, why was it so small? Because it was not for the inhabitants of the commoners. It was for the inhabitants only of the Fatimids and their soldiers. Don't forget that the Fatimids were Shiites and the rest of the population were Sunnis. And the Ismaili sect of the Fatimids, it's like a secret sect. They do not really reveal what they believe in. So they wanted to be kept isolated from the public so that the public would not know exactly what they did and what did they believe in. They wanted to create a special or a different class from the rest of the people. And that's why Cairo was so small. After Fustat was burned, before the entrance of Saladin by a few years by the Fatimid vizier Shawr ibn Murgham, yes. Actually Fustat had vanished and the people had started moving to Cairo, and that explains why Cairo was crowded. Cairo is crowded not only nowadays but since the ancient times, since the foundation, because Cairo from the beginning it was not prepared for the inhabitants of such big population.
Yes, so Mr. Kamel, the old Cairo is more than 1,400 years old, and it is registered on the UNESCO World Heritage List. Could you give us your insight concerning the difficulty of renovating such an old city, a historical city like the old Cairo? It's not just renovating a certain building, it's a renovation of the streets, of the infrastructure inside it, of the buildings it encompasses.
Well, let's see first yes. what we have in Old Cairo. In Old Cairo, it's located inside an ancient Roman fortress, which is the fortress of Babylon. The yes. fortress of Babylon was founded a very long time ago during the time of Emperor Trajan, the 1st century AD, and it was enlarged by Emperor Arcadius in the year 395 AD. All the old buildings are located inside the fortress. So in the ancient times, the Nile had a different direction. The Nile was very close to Old Cairo, and it used to the extent that we used to have a big island.
You know, that was a question I was also always asking myself. Why did they didn't build the old Cairo beside the Nile? So the map was not
The map was not the
not
same.
like this.
The Nile was
That was
passing,
very near?
was very near,
Yes.
and the district which you see in front of the fortress, that was an island that was called Dinin. So this was
Okay.
like an entrance to Cairo, and that's why the buildings in Old Cairo, especially St. Sergius Church, they used to have a big problem with subterranean water, which thank God it was solved a number of years ago.
Yes.
And that was the difficulty in restoring the old buildings. But this was a mega project that was finished a few years ago, and I think nowadays you can go to St. Sergius Church and go down into the Holy Crypt and walk through the Holy Crypt. After this was something impossible in the past because of the subterranean water.
Yes.
In this area, we have all the villages are represented. You've got the first mosque in Africa, the Mosque of Amr ibn al-As. It's dating back to the 7th century AD, 642. Behind it, you have the city of Fustat. Then inside the fortress, you have one of the oldest churches, which is the Church of St. Sergius, that has the Holy Crypt, which is dating back to the period between the 4th and 5th century, dedicated to St. Bacchus and St. Sergius. And in that Holy Crypt, the Holy Family had lived there for almost 6 months during the maiden voyage. Also behind it, and in those days, or as a Coptic habit, the Copts used to build the churches between the houses inside the districts without any signs that reveals that this is a place for practicing Christianity for many reasons, like the Roman persecution, especially when the Romans were still practicing their ancient cult, as well as when the conflict had started between the Eastern and the Western Church that was supported by the Romans. Behind it, you have one of the most ancient Jewish synagogues, which is Beit HaKnesset of Rabbi Ben Ezra. This was built on a holy spot. Originally, it was a church that had belonged to those who used to make the candles. That's why it was called the Church of El Shamma'in, those who make the candles. And then it was bought during the time of Ahmed al-Tulun in the 9th century by Rabbi Ibrahim bin Ezra, the scribe. This is a very important building for all the scholars in the whole world, especially that after in 1890 it was fully renovated. You know that the Jewish sect in Egypt was a central sect. It was very important for all the Jewish communities all over the world. So in there we had found a treasure of ancient documents called the Geneza. The Geneza, it's documents, all kinds of documents, marriage contracts, trading contracts, because in the Jewish belief, they do not throw any papers that has the name of God in it. So after making a certain ritual, they bury it either underground or they preserve it in a safe place. Unfortunately, most of these documents were taken during the time of the British occupation. Yes. And they went to Oxford University. We only have a few over here. And when we started studying these documents, we found that we discovered lots of facts about the life of the Jewish community in Egypt. This synagogue was used for a very long time by the Eastern Jewish community, who were called the Qarra'im. The Qarra'im, those who speak fluent Arabic, those who believe only in the Torah, they do not recognize the Talmud. Most of them, they came from Iraq and Syria. Then later on, starting from the 19th century, the other sects had started using it. Also, you have the Hanging Church. The Hanging Church, it's a unique church because it's built on a bridge that links between two towers. And in this church, dating back to the period also between the 4th and the 5th century, but the importance of this church, that the Pope's throne was moved from Alexandria, because originally the Egyptian church's Pope used to live in Alexandria.
Yes.
The throne of the Pope was moved to Cairo into this church, and this church was renovated several times during the time of the Abbasid period, during the time of Harun al-Rashid, and later on in the Mamluk period, and that explains the Arabic style of decorations and motifs inside this church. You have also other churches like Santa Barbara, like the Church of St. George. So it's the only place in the world where you can find a number of religious buildings belonging to the three monotheistic religions
Yes.
in one place.
Yes.
Of course, there's nothing like that anywhere else.
Yes.
So it was something natural that we would give it a great deal of care. And that's because many travelers would like to go and see the three religions represented with historical buildings.
Yes. So, Mr. Ihab, what would restoring historic Cairo or old Cairo would add to the touristic map of Egypt?
If you look at Cairo, Cairo can be an open museum.
Yes.
For example, you would go to El Mu'izz Street or the
Yes.
Palace Walk. You will find old Islamic,
rich, yes.
very rich. Not
Of
only El
course.
Mu'izz Street, by the way, you have Bab el Wazir area where
Yeah,
most of the Mamluk princes used to live,
To live.
not far
The
away.
old Islamic houses also.
Yes,
The Sahimi house, for example, the mosques there, Al Hakim Amrillah, a mosque
yes,
at the start of
yes,
the,
and Al
the
Ahmar.
gate of Nasr,
Yes.
the gate of Bab al Futuh.
Yes, because you will find buildings from the Fatimid period,
Yes.
buildings from the Mamluk period,
Yes.
and don't forget that over there the first hospital with the modern concept of hospital existed, the Bimaristan that was opened by Sultan al-Nasr Muhammad ibn Qalawun,
Yes.
which is, by the way, up till now still operating, and lots of people, they go to be treated over there,
Yeah.
especially that it's now it's an ophthalmology
Yes.
clinic. Behind, as I said, you have Bab al-Wazir, you have Suq al-Silah, you have lots and lots of
Yes,
ancient Islamic, in the Gamaliya,
Yes,
yes.
Al Hussein.
Um,
By the way, most of these areas and streets were mentioned by Naguib Mahfouz, of course, the great Egyptian novel writer, in his stories.
of course, because that's
When
where
I was young and I used to read for Naguib Mahfouz, I started to know about the streets in Old Cairo from the stories I read.
Yes, of course. He grew up over there, and
Yes.
he wrote lots of his novels over there. So Cairo, it's an open museum. You have lots and lots of areas. I mean, we all know, yes, Shara al-Mu'izz, because it's famous, but there are lots of other places which are rich with Islamic monuments,
Yes.
like the street of Saliba, Shara Saliba, which is close to the citadel. It's full of Islamic monuments, starting from the Mosque of Ahmad ibn Tulun, dating back to the 9th century AD, up till the group of Prince Sheikhu, which dating back to the 14th century AD. So Cairo deserves to be an open museum.
Yes.
And if we talk about Greater Cairo, to include Giza province, you have so many ancient monuments. You
Of
have
course.
the pyramids, Dahshur, Saqqara, Memphis. So
And of course, the Grand Egyptian Museum.
Exactly. So you're talking about an open-air museum that's occupying an area of 5,000 square miles, which I don't think anywhere else in the world you would find an open-air museum with such a magnitude and big size.
Yes. I thank you very much for coming today in the Breakfast Show. Thank you for your valuable information, Mr. Ihab Kamel, the historian and researcher.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Well, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for following me in this segment. I leave you with the rest of the segments of the Breakfast Show with my colleague Nashwa Rashid.